Okay, I think we should probably get started. Um, so thank you everybody for joining us. I'm Saber Ibrahim, and this is my colleague Heather Meeker. We are with Chinstrap Community, and this is a fireside chat with Nariman Jelveh. Nariman is CEO of Pewter. Pewter was one of the hottest OSS projects of 2024, having amassed 35,000 stars on GitHub and over 275 contributors. And by way of perspective, Pewter did its first open source release in March 2024. So, in a little over, in less than 18 months, it's achieved those stunning numbers. Nariman just closed the seed round for Pewter in May of 2025. And we're going to talk to Nariman about his journey as a open source software entrepreneur. And he is going to share his insights and lessons and wisdom he has learned along the way. So we're very grateful to have Nariman here. Thank you very much for joining us, Nariman. And I was going to talk a little bit about Pewter, but I thought it would be best to let you describe in your own words. So we'll start off with the first question. Can you tell us a little bit about what Pewter is and what it does?
Sure thing. Yeah. Computer is basically a completely new type of computer, a new type of operating system that is trying to reimagine how you use a computer. The overarching philosophy behind it is that last time we had a successful operating system was more than 30 years ago, named in Linux. And at the time when Linux came out, we didn't have the web, we didn't have cloud, we didn't have AI, we didn't have a lot of the things that we now take for granted. Those were not invented back then. And the idea behind computer is that the world has changed, whereas computers are just sticking to the old architecture of the past couple of decades. And I would say computer is the uh, first serious attempt at building a new computer for the new age of software. We have built-in cloud functionalities. We have built-in AI. We have built-in collaboration and networking capabilities. So anything that you would expect from the modern software, a modern user would expect from their computer, we're trying to build it in Pewter. Basically, if you could build a new computer in 2025, how would you build it? What would you put in it? So that's the idea behind Pewter.
Very cool. Very cool. So, um, how did you decide that, with respect to Pewter, how did you decide that you wanted to start a commercial open source software business?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, first time I announced Pewter was in summer 2022. I put it on Reddit, and it basically blew up in a very big way. It became uh, just to give you some numbers, 400,000 people showed up on Pewter.com, the website itself, within the first 24 hours. And for weeks after that, I was just getting emails, comments, DMs from any channel. And I could tell by wide margin, the number one request was to open source Pewter. Now, at the time, I didn't really take that seriously because I was thinking, hey, if I could keep the source code to myself, why would I give it away for free? And this is coming from somebody who's been programming for 28 years. So imagine I've used every open source project under the sun, and this was my thinking, which was horrible. And so, but this was the number one request. And a couple months later, I was in Germany meeting another open source founder, Jan Oberhauser of N8N. You probably see N8N everywhere now. Uh, and we had lunch, and he was adamant that I should open source Pewter. He told me this would be the best decision you could ever make. Uh, this changed my trajectory. This would change your trajectory. Pewter is perfect for open sourcing. And well, that gave me a really big push, and I got introduced to Heather uh, through Jan. I had a conversation with Heather, but back then I wasn't still ready to open source. And the software itself, to be honest, wasn't really ready as well. It took us a year. That was March 2023. Almost exactly a year later, after my conversation with Heather, I read two of her books, Open Source for Business and From Project to Profit. So there are some incredible arguments in those books. Project to Profit has more arguments in it. The other one is more technical. Um, but there are some great arguments in there. And to be honest, open source computer was still number one request. And then I guess early March, I had a quick call with Heather. We discussed this, and then it happened like this. On a Friday, I made the decision. On Monday, we open source Pewter. And everything Heather told us about open sourcing and what would happen if you open source and operate this, it really happened exactly like that. The moment we put it out, it just went boom. Um, so that's the short and sweet of it. There are obviously reasons for it. I can get into it if you want. What are the specific reasons of open source and Pewter?
Yeah, actually, it would be great if you could, talk a little bit more about that. And if Heather, if you could provide sort of some perspective on your end as well in terms of that conversation with Nariman. What were sort of kind of the feedback that you got from your community about or from your user base, I guess, at the time of open sourcing Pewter, and kind of what they saw as the effect of that from their perspective.
Yeah. So I remember when I was reading the book and when we were having the conversation, because if you Google why should I open source my project, you will get some canned reasons for it. Oh, it's good for marketing. Okay, but that doesn't really make sense. So it's good for marketing, or you're going to get free engineering, which is not true for the vast majority of projects. So they weren't really convincing to me, but there were a few specific reasons that came up during my conversation with Heather and the book that actually did really solidify the reason for me. One was that open source does incredibly well for infrastructure dev tools and hyper horizontal offerings. And what is the most hyper horizontal offering when it comes to software? Would be an operating system. So at the top of the food chain when it comes to open sourcing, it's an operating system. Um, the other one was that when you open source your project, you're basically front loading the cost of building a brand with developers by giving away your IP. What that means is that you put your IP out there in the world under an open source license, and you immediately start accumulating brand equity with developers because developers, let's be honest here, they're not building on anything that is not open source in this day and age. So that was another reason. The other one, there are also the long tail reasons of you're going to get contributors and all that kind of stuff. I think it doesn't apply to every open source project. Getting contributors is not something that many projects are lucky with. But I would say those two reasons were incredibly important. After the fact that number one request from the community was that. Now there were some side issues as well. For example, we were always being, for some reason, because Pure tends to go viral every couple of weeks because it's kind of fun. There's a desktop environment. It's kind of weird. So it tends to go viral a lot. And before we were open source, when it would go viral, some of the biggest complaints were like, "Hey, why is this free? Are you stealing our data? You're probably harvesting the data and selling it." And the other one was coming from developers. "Hey, this is not open source. I don't trust it. I don't trust how this works. I don't trust what happens with my users' data." So there was a huge trust issue between us and the community. No matter what I did, I had this ironclad privacy policy in place. We had a really nice terms of use, which we spent a lot of money on. So we try to calm people down by providing some sort of guarantee when it comes to privacy and their data. It didn't work because it turns out people don't really read those documents. No matter how much I say, "Hey, you can go there and see what's going on in the project." Um, so at the end of the day, it made sense that if you open source and they can actually take a look at the source code and see who we are, what we're doing, what we're trying to build, how much effort has gone into the back end to make it secure, private, and all that. Uh, that would probably calm people down. And to be honest, it immediately went away. I basically never hear those complaints again since we open source. They never really tell us, hey, you're stealing data or anything like that. I think we built a very solid brand with privacy conscious community, which was very loud. It was a small number of people, but very loud, and I think rightly so.
No, that's an excellent point, and that's one of the benefits of open source that we preach a lot to our community is that that's really the only way that um, you as sort of a server side technology can kind of guarantee to your users that you're saying what you're doing and that you're not doing what you say you're not doing in terms of just ensuring transparency. Um, Heather, is there any additional context that you can offer, perhaps from your conversations with Nariman around the decision to open source?
Well, I think Nariman put it very well in terms of what's important about that decision. And just to underscore, I think that for an operating system today, there's really no other choice. If you were developing in a different kind of area in the technology stack, you might have other ideas. But I think proprietary operating systems will not succeed in this day and age and this market. So I think open source is really the only avenue for that kind of software.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, as Nariman himself, you said at the outset, Linux, the most popular operating system in the world, arguably the most important invention in the history of computing, is the world's also happens to be not so coincidentally the world's most, popular open source project. So, just made sense to follow that route, of course. Um, so in terms of licensing, and this is a question we get a lot, which license should I choose? So Pewter is under the AGPL. So can you talk a little bit about why you chose the AGPL and, what challenges did you face in making that choice?
Sure. Yeah, I would strongly recommend that everybody reads. If you're thinking about licensing, you read Heather's book. Now, at this point, I think people will think I'm getting a cut from these plugs. I keep plugging Heather's books, but they're good. They're good. You're going to learn a lot about licensing, and not something you can find online if you Google. So go read the book. AGPL, I think the funny thing is AGPL was pretty much a no-brainer for us because this is a cloud offering. And from a business perspective, we wanted to have a license that protects us from giant cloud companies that can take a piece of software and offer it as SaaS and take everything with them. Even if they make contributions, we're not going to get, even if they make changes, we're not going to get anything back. So AGPL was, I think, a no-brainer. Now, some companies they're really scared of the situation of a cloud company taking their invention, their project, and monetizing them without any benefits to them. So they go to the extreme. They create new licenses. They do all this kind of stuff. I'm not a big fan of that because I think, as Heather would say, there's an understanding tax to these licenses. So if somebody sees AGPL 3, or if they say MIT or Apache, all those like 10, 12 popular licenses, they basically know what's going on. And if there's a lawyer at their company, and they need to make a decision, they can do it very quickly. Now, if you have a custom license, that has to be lawyered and it's going to take time. They have to sit down and analyze it and see the implications. I am not a fan of that. And one thing I've learned with Pewter is that you always want to lower the barrier to entry to whatever you're doing. Is it adoption of the code? Is it landing on pewter.com and not having to sign up for anything? Whatever it is, you try to make it easier, not more difficult. So doing a custom license was out of question. And amongst all the licenses that were out there, from a business perspective, I think AGPL was perfect. Now, from a community perspective, I still think AGPL is the best one because AGPL would force people who make changes to contribute their changes back, to release their changes in the public. I think that's incredibly important for an operating system project. I read a lot about Linux and their licensing. So they have an older version of AGP. It's not AGPL, it's GPL, but the reason is basically the same. Everybody has to contribute back to this project if they change it. I mean, that's the whole point of having this hyper horizontal thing that people can take and change and grow. To me, if somebody makes a change to something like Pewter, and they don't want to put the contribution back, uh, there's no really good security or technical reason behind it. It's purely business. And I'm not a big fan of that. I think there's a good amount of precedent for these types of licenses doing really well. Linux being the biggest example. If you force contributions back, everybody wins, even the company that doesn't really agree with it.
No, I think that's an excellent point. And actually, this is a subject that we discuss a lot in our workshops. And I think you summarize sort of the guidance that we provide pretty well in terms of choosing a custom license, or writing your own license, or choosing an obscure license that does exactly what that aligns perfectly with your objectives. It's a tempting option, but ultimately it's not the best idea because of the understanding tax it imposes, as you put it. I like that term, by the way.
Yeah, that's headers. On that note, I want to add something else as well. Having custom licenses creates one more issue. For example, right now, I'm aware of some really big companies taking Pewter, experimenting with it, see what they can do with it in terms of uh, if they have a product that they think Pewter could fit into their strategy of, or things like that. I'm aware that they're doing this. Now, imagine if you had a custom license, now they would have like this whole thing, even experimentation would have been delayed, which is obviously not good for us. And what's the point of open sourcing if the license is going to be a problem again? Like you have to sit down and read the license. I would do a proprietary license then at that point. So it doesn't make too much sense for me, but I think certain businesses, they might have good reasons behind it. There are nuances, obviously, but for something like Pewter, especially, I think we should definitely go with a common license, and one that is basically in line with AGPL. AGPL being the best one.
Great points all around. Now, shifting gears a little bit, one thing Pewter has done, just based on the numbers I recited at the outset, you've done an excellent job of growing your community. And as we, teach in our workshops, the number one word in terms of open source software in general, but especially commercial open source software, everything keeps going back to community, right? That's a very important concept. So what can you are there any insights you can offer to cost founders in terms of what are some of the strategies that you used to grow your community? What types of, creative outside the box ideas did you employ to grow your community and your contributor base?
Yeah, sure. So we were pretty lucky that the moment we announced our project, it got a lot of attention. So immediately there were hundreds of thousands of people coming to the GitHub repo. I think we did do around 300 or 400,000 people, if I remember it correctly, in the first couple of days, which is in line with my Reddit release. And it seems to be the magic number, 300 to 500,000 when you hit number one on a subreddit or Hacker News. Um, so we were lucky in that we got a lot of attention right off the bat. But one thing that was very important, and honestly, I just did it because I thought it might matter, was that before we released Pewter, I actually created a lot of issues. I opened issues or tasks on GitHub in anticipation of people landing on our repository and wanting to pick up these tasks. So I created maybe, if I remember correctly, maybe 20, 30 different issues. And each one was labeled. It was pretty well written. And they were more simple issues so that somebody could pick up within 10, 15, or 30 minutes and have it open a PR for it, meaning contributed back, and we would be able to add it to the project. And I think that was incredibly important because immediately people started picking up those issues. I think we got most of the issues merged within the first couple of days. And so that almost right off the bat immediately created a sense of community. So people came to Discord, which is another thing. You should probably have a Discord, Reddit, and all those social media in order, um, communication channels. So opening those issues right off the bat was a great idea. And so continuing that, I started opening more and more issues. And one thing I learned, I'm being very detailed here, so it's not very general advice, it's very detailed advice, and hopefully it's practical. But one other thing I did, which I think is going to apply to a lot of open source projects, if you want to get contributors, is first of all, you want, as a new project, you probably want to have simpler issues that people can easily pick up, and you want to hold their hands and make sure they have a good experience, a positive feedback loop when they have the PRs, when they submit a PR and have it merged. And so in continuation of that, another thing we did is we opened a lot of issues for localizing Pewter, meaning translating it basically. And that one was incredibly popular. People loved it. And Pewter was translated in 20 languages in a matter of days. So it was fully translated in many languages very, very quickly. People loved that. And even right now, there are people after a year and couple months, people still come back to the translations, people who did the initial translations and try to improve it. For example, uh, the Nigerian Igbo translation, there's somebody who's a maintainer of it and keeps improving it. So that one, having simple issues right off the bat that people can pick up, uh, internationalization, that is a great idea for some reason that draws a lot of people in. Um, Having your communication channels in order when you launch, that is very important. Where do I go to communicate? To be perfectly honest, I'm suffering on Discord. I tend to miss messages and be late to respond, but I'm trying to do my best. Doesn't mean you should shut it down. You should have a Discord, and Discord is where real-time communication for open source projects happen these days. So you have to have these communication channels in order. You need to have a great README file. So all your GitHub health files, you have to have them in order. You need to have your README file. It has to be well written. It has to be easy to use, easy to understand, not long. You shouldn't go on a rant explaining what you're doing. You should keep it simple. Um, so these are the technical details of it. And I would say in terms of how you interact with contributors, this would have the largest dividend over time if you can get it right. If you get a PR, you have to respond to it very quickly. We have this internal SLA for responding to PRs and issues. It's very, very difficult. I would say this is the most difficult thing when it comes to open source, just staying on top of these. But responding quickly to PRs and issues, based on my data, is the number one driver of getting new contributors or retaining contributors. Now, again, we do our best, but I think we could do way better in this area. But having an SLA in place, for example, saying, hey, we're going to respond to everything within 24 hours, 48 hours, a week. I don't know what number works for you. But that really helps because this tight feedback loop is incredibly important to contributors. Another random thought would be that treating your open source project kind of like a B2C company, assuming that your contributors are your customers, people who open bugs, bug reports, and things like that. You have to treat them well. Now, this again, this is one of those things that is kind of odd because they're not literally your customers. So there is also a leadership sort of a situation here as well. It's a little different from straight up customers that you get, but the idea is that you try to respond quickly, respectfully, and you try to hold their hands when they have a problem. A lot of times, I would I would actually fix people's PRs without even telling them. So before I merge it, I actually go in and fix the bugs myself, and then merge the PRs. I've done this many times. Having documentation that is easy to understand, having a build process that is very easy to follow. You don't want to have a complicated build process. The more complicated, the fewer people are going to try your project out. Um, and these are all ideas around being sort of like a B2C company, operating like a B2C company when it comes to your open source project. Uh, we did a few ideas that didn't work or didn't work really well. One crazy one would be advertising. So I put ads on Twitter to see how much, how many people will land on repository and contribute. The numbers are okay, but I don't think it justifies the cost. I'm still running experiments here and there to see how it works out. But I think that was probably not the best idea we had. Focusing completely on technical contributors, that's another thing. I suggest that you also focus on non-technical contributors, people who provide support, people who help with documentation, with your README files, with security is technical, but anything around the repository as well. You need a good support base around the project. Uh, I remember I talked to the community lead of a major company, and I asked him, what is a healthy community? They have a massive community. Their Discord is like 300,000 people, something like that. It's a massive number. And he told me the number one healthiest sign of being healthy when it comes to a community is when the community members help each other out. So it's not how often you post in the Discord or how many labels you have or things like that. Is, hey, do they feel like they're part of a community helping each other out? If you have that, you have a strong community. And I think we actually did reach that place where our community members help each other out. Of course, we step in as much as we can. We provide that support role as well. But it always puts a smile on my face when I go on Discord and I see people helping each other out, fixing each other's code, providing support, answering questions. It's really amazing.
And that echoes something that we've heard multiple cost founders mention, is that when you have a community that, you know, consisting of people that help each other, and that issues get resolved without any involvement from the actual company employees, that's a sign that sort of you've reached a certain level of of credibility. By the way, two things I wanna mention. Number one, Nariman actually wrote an article for us that really dives deeply into the issue of community building. That's on our website, and we'll Heather, if you could share the link in the chat, um, that would be great. And the second thing is, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to write them in the chat, and we'll get to them later in the session.
Yeah, we have a question, so just let me know when you're ready for questions.
Oh, yeah, sure. No reason we can't take it right now.
Yeah, so Joel has asked, on the security side, what certifications or attestations are you pursuing right now?
Well, we actually when we open source, we did go with a company to get into certification. They did actually do it with us. We just simply didn't publish it. But our plan going forward is doing this quarterly, having a company audit our code, both pewter.com, which has some proprietary extensions, and Pewter, the open source project. Now, aside from that, when it comes to security, I know this wasn't really your question, but just to comment on it, we did have a massive bug bounty, which is a really cool story in and of itself. We did have a massive bug bounty uh, right off the bat again when we started when we open sourced the project. That helped a lot. Um, but I think a combination of bug bounty and having an security firm audit your source code, that would be the winning combination. Uh, when it comes to security, we're not really trying to innovate here. We're just trying to find follow what's out there, what others have done that worked for them. We innovate a lot on the code side and things like that, maybe even business model. But when it comes when it comes to security, we're just trying to follow what's out there.
Awesome. Yeah, and you know, Joel, I echo your thoughts. Love the idea of a bug bounty for OSS projects.
Yes.
Um, you recently closed a fundraising round, I believe in May. Is that correct?
Yes.
So that experience, for better or for worse, is, I'm sure, fresh in your mind. So, if you could talk a little bit about that, especially the aspect of how, being a cost company played into that process, and what were sort of the things that, you had to kind of discuss with investors specifically on the cost front.
Sure. Yeah. Um, to my surprise, a lot of investors, maybe I was just talking to the right investors all the time, but to my surprise, the vast majority of investors are super open to open source. Um, and they understand it pretty well, especially if they're in infrastructure, dev tools, and things like that. They really understand it well. So we're not living in a world anymore where an investor is going to show up and say, "Hey, investor, open source doesn't work. It's not gonna. You're not gonna make money." We don't live that in that world anymore. Even I remember, maybe I don't know, 5, 10 years ago, I would hear all these horror stories coming out, and investors being like, "Oh, we're never going to invest in open source again." But I think with the successes of Elastic, Mongo, and all these massive unicorns, investors are very, very open to open source. Now, when we open source, uh, I already have relationships with a good number of investors, and almost immediately, within days, we pretty much closed our round. And this is a year and a half ago, but that one fell apart the very last second. And I think one of the reasons was that the fund that was investing, this would have been their first open source investment, so they backed out. Now, even though as I just said that investors really understand open source, but there are investors like that it might be their first investment in open source, and that you gotta be careful. Those guys, you have to hold their hands, make them understand, maybe bring examples to them so that it doesn't blow up the very last second. So the first attempt, it wasn't really attempt. It was just a regular conversation with an investor I already knew. That one fell apart, and then because the announcement went viral, we actually got a lot of inbound interest. Just getting cold emails getting cold emails, messages on LinkedIn. So I did get connected to a good number of new investors after we open sourced. And the first time we seriously tried to raise a round, I think it was in September 2024, where I actually went out, started pitching, and that again, we managed to get to the very last stages, but fell apart again at the very last second. Uh, but it did create a really solid relationship with some of these investors. And then the very last time, which was in around March, I think, when I announced that we're actually doing a round and we're going to close it this time, it happened almost immediately. Now the round closed in May, but the term sheet and everything was almost immediate. It happened very, very quickly. And I think some of the random tidbits I can give you around fundraising when you're open source. Um, One advantage of being open source when fundraising is that your traction is public. So um, investors can always go into your repository, see how many stars you have, how many contributors you have, how many downloads you have. These are all public information. So they can look it up, and they don't have to take your word for it. So that I think is amazing. You don't have to give them, I don't know, access to your Stripe account or whatever you have to do. They can just see the open source, especially at the early stages. They can just see your open source project. They can go to your Discord. They can see this whole thing, this community, and get a good understanding of what's going on. So that really helps. Um, Again, investors understand open source pretty well right now. They're very, very okay with it, especially the ones that are technical. They really do understand how open source works, how you go about monetizing it, how much better it is in the age of cloud. So generally, off the top of my head, I don't remember ever having serious issues explaining what open source is to anyone because everybody already knew what's going on. and they understand the trajectory of your stars and contributors. So if they see the number going to 1 to 30,000 in a year, they know that this is probably something's going on there, right? Uh, Business model, I think you have to have a very good, solid reason of why you open source your project. That's important, and I think with Pewter, we did really have a good reason for it, and there was evidence to back it up. That's also something that comes up a lot. Hey, why did you open source? If this is such an amazing project, why did you open source it, right? You should have a really good answer to that. And the other things that apply to fundraising non-open source projects also applies to open source. You have to have a proper business plan in place. You should probably, I mean, one of the things that is very important when fundraising, in my opinion, is that you should start having a relationship with investors way ahead of time. So if you want to raise money, don't start cold emailing people like a week before and expect them to drop a couple $1 million into your company by the end of next week. I mean, it's doable. I've heard people doing this, but you don't want to rely on that strategy. You want a strategy that is scalable. So I would say if you're planning to raise money next year, maybe you should start building relationships now, updating them on a regular basis. And it can be completely organic. I mean, with our current investors, this was completely organic. I wasn't planning anything. We were just talking, texting each other all the time. And I think that really, really helped. So building a relationship with investors early on, I think is important. At the end of the day, this is a relationship built on trust, and the more you know each other, the hopefully, if nothing goes wrong, the more trust you're going to build up over time. So I guess it's pretty similar to non-open source projects where you have to have all your ducks in a row before you go out and start pitching to people. Um, but the one good advantage of it is that a lot of the information is public. So investors can look it up and they don't have to take your word for it.
That's great to hear that you didn't have to explain, why you're an open source company to your investors, and that's a change that also we're seeing, that investors understand open source a lot better than they did just a few years ago. So I'm glad that is what played out.
Well, I did explain. My point is that having a good reason of why open sourcing. So just saying, hey, for marketing or things like that, and I think a good investor is not going to buy that, and you don't want an investor like that who's just going to take that and be like, okay, that makes sense. I mean, for marketing. So you should have a better philosophy around open source when you're going to pitch to investors.
Awesome. What are so in open source, there's always a lot of pressure to add features. And there's always, sort of pressure to respond to the community's requests for new features and new functionality. How do you decide where to focus your development efforts and which new features to add and which ones to put on the back burner?
Yeah, I think that's the $1 billion question here. What feature you're going to add when? I mean, we get bombarded by feature requests. It's incredible the number of feature requests that come our way. Uh, I don't think there is a binary answer to this. I mean, there's no model you can just fit it in and get the results the other end. Um, I would say the way we approach it is that we try to triage these requests coming in and have a statistical analysis on how many people simply want this. We did this with open source. We did this with the new feature of workers in the cloud that we just launched in alpha. We did this with our App Center, Dev Center. Pretty much at this point, a lot of features are coming from that. So we look at the community. What is the community asking for? And we try to prioritize based on that. But the thing is, this is not always the best source of making decisions, because some of the feature requests that come our way simply don't align with what Peter does well. And I think if people go to another project, they're going to have a better experience. So there's some tough decisions to make there as well. When a feature request comes in, the number is also great. A lot of people are asking for it, but it's simply we won't do a really good job with it. So we have to unfortunately drop it. Um, But going back to that, I would say community pressure is number one. How many people simply ask for this, and what's their seniority level when they ask for it? Meaning, how much experience they have with the project, and where is this coming from? Is this a serious problem? Is this something we're lacking right now? So that's definitely number one. The community asking for it, users, community, everybody. Number two is just our own ideas. We have ideas for strategic reasons or because of our understanding of the system. We think that this feature is essential, even if people haven't asked for it yet. So we do those kind of features as well. Um, and then we also have this dynamic planning around features versus maintenance or improving stability and performance. And that also comes more from community pressure. For example, we actually admittedly have some performance issues right now, and we know that is big enough that we have to do a performance sprint to improve it. Now we're formalizing this, so we're tracking performance, and we're going to have internal and external SLAs, meaning, for example, we want availability to be 99.9%. So that's an SLA we're going to stick to. So more tracking, having these KPIs in place and trying to enforce them. Um, so, but when it comes to community versus us, I would say 80% is coming from community. They're asking us to build something or improve this. Hey, why is performance so bad? Why are subdomains not showing up? All sorts of issues. Or why is there no office on Pewter? Why don't you add payments? Why don't you add server-side processing? All of these sorts of requests. 80% of it from community, 20% coming from us. I would say we're also senior members of the community, so our words sometimes our ideas might should be taken seriously too. So 80% from community, 20% from us, and then uh, this number doesn't really change that much. If anything, I think what community is asking us, the portion of it is increasing.
No, that's really great. I particularly like what you mentioned about sort of, evaluating requests in terms of, seniority and sort of the level of involvement and how long a community member has been a part of the community, evaluating their feature request in light of that. I think that's a great idea because that gauges according to their understanding of the product and its functionality.
From a business perspective, I think this might be helpful to some people because it helped us a lot, and I think it makes us have bigger jumps. Is that we also have this thing from a company perspective, not really completely open source perspective, is that hey, if we start this project, if it's a novel feature, so if it's a new feature, if we're going to spend a couple of weeks on it and it's not a couple of days only, is it going to move the needle in a meaningful way? Are we going to have more developers? Are we going to consistently increase the number of developers month over month? Consistently improve the developers, the users month over month. This is also very important. So we tend to not do a lot of things. For example, we didn't even have a newsletter. This was the first time I sent emails out, I think, in a year. So we don't do that kind of stuff because we don't think it will move the needle as much as we want it to. So we're trying to stay focused on really high impact features or improvements. If we ship a major feature, the idea is that it's going to double our user base. So this is also a litmus test on what feature we're going to pick up internally. For us, it's important that major features move the needle in a major way.
No, really, lot of great insight there. Um, Going back to the question of community, what are some of the benefits you've noticed? And you talked a little bit about this, but if you could just elaborate a little bit further, what are some of the benefits you've noticed of having built an OSS community around Pewter that you don't think you would have achieved otherwise? And if you had, you know, going back to that key decision you made in March of 2024, or February of 2024, of open sourcing the code, if you had decided the other way to keep it closed source, what are some things that you have achieved in terms of your, being able to leverage your community that you don't think you would have achieved if you had decided the other way?
Yeah, so I think if we had an open source, we wouldn't have made it. To be honest, I think we would have shut down by now. Pewter is a developer-centric company, meaning we're trying to, even though you have that desk, what's that?
It's a pretty big benefit.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, if Pewter is a developer-centric company, I mean, the entire business model, the entire strategy is built around developers, even though we have the end user side of things, but developers are what we're focused on. And we instantly build brand equity with developers when we open source. So if we had an open source Pewter, we wouldn't have this growth that we're experiencing right now. That's 100% would have been the case, because Pewter was in production for 2 years prior to open sourcing, and we were having this consistent growth. And I'm 100% sure it's attributed to Pewter being open source. Now, it's not completely about the license. It's also about what we're getting out of the community. People test Pewter all the time. They open issues. I mean, all these like general things you get with the open source. They test it all the time. Sometimes they open an issue and they fix it. So they submit fixes for things. I mean, some of the issues, we had a bug a couple of weeks ago. Even though I wrote the majority of the desktop environment front end of Pewter, I was scratching my head. I couldn't figure out how to fix it. It was my bug. And somebody randomly from the community showed up, fixed the bug, submitted the PR, didn't even say anything, just submitted the PR. It worked perfectly, and we merged it. So this is the diversity of contributors really helps. So they were really good at that part of the front end. So they showed up, fixed it, submitted PR, and they just went about their business. So getting these outside contributions in terms of ideas, bug fixes, feature requests, that's definitely a big win. Another one would be hiring. I think the hiring pipeline you get out of open source is just incredible. Hiring people, if you've started a company, you know how incredibly difficult it is to find people who are fit with your company. They like your company, you like them, and you manage to get a deal done, and you start working together. There's so many things that go into it. It's a very difficult process. That's why you have recruiters charging 20% off first year salary for a hire, because it's not easy and people don't want to do it. It's a very difficult process. Now, open source makes it incredibly easy to hire people from the community, and filtering is very easy. You can literally see what they've done, and it's going to be super relevant to the project. And you kind of have a working relationship with them prior to even hiring them, right? You have a conversation, you chat, you know who they are. So when it comes to hiring, recruitment, open source is just nobody can compete with that. We hired 3 people from the community already, and I think it's just it's one of the biggest benefits that I was going to say nobody talks about, but I realized actually a lot of people talk about it. But nobody takes it seriously, how much easier it gets to hire people. So that would be another one. But number one thing about open sourcing is that being a developer-centric company, it, we should have done this earlier. It completely changed the trajectory of Pewter.
And that's actually a point that I really want to put an exclamation point on for everybody out there listening who is either, a prospective cost entrepreneur and hasn't pulled the trigger yet, or is a job seeker, or thinks, with all the layoffs on the horizon, thinks they may become a job seeker sometime soon. Is that, if you're a cost entrepreneur, just as Nariman said, having a community gives you a great pool of talent, a built-in pool of talent to hire from, and it's not as nerve-wracking a process as it normally would be. If you are a job seeker, a prospective job seeker, find an open source project that, in something that you're interested in, and go all in and become a dedicated member of the community. And, who knows, your next job could come out of that experience. So yeah, thank you very much. That's a great point, Nariman. Um, Pewter's currently scaling. and you've experienced a lot of growth and are continuing to experience growth. So, what are some of the challenges you faced in scaling an open source project in particular?
Yeah, I think number one challenge with it would be that sometimes it feels like you're building two products, and I think that has to do with architecture. This is something that if you're doing costs, you're going to be facing this problem. So you have this open source version of your software, and then you have this other monetized version. I don't want to call it completely proprietary because it doesn't really have to be that way, but you have this monetized version. Now, this monetized version is going to be the open source plus some modifications, right? Now, if you don't architect your software correctly, it's going to be tough. You're going to feel like you're building two products at the same time. This is a major problem, and I've a lot of experienced cost founders that I've spoken with do actually complain about this. Now, I think what we're doing right now, especially because we're scaling, and this is a really challenging thing. But what we're doing right now is that we're going with an extension system where you have this open source project and you can put it in production for monetization using different extensions. Now, I really highly recommend that everybody takes this seriously. Try to have an extension system in place from the get-go so that you don't end up building two different products. It's very painful. It's hard to maintain. If you have an open source project and then you have another one with code that is changed, this is a very painful thing to do. It really creates duplicate effort, and it's just very difficult to scale. Now, there are other constraints that you have to deal with. For example, for us, we knew that we wanted an extension system. We were so hammered by the community and just being so extremely busy, we never had time to refactor to add extensions to Pewter. This is something we're adding. But if I had one advice for you, is that you make sure you don't end up building two products. You make sure that the main product is open source. Your monetized version is the open source plus some outside extension system that you've built around it. If you don't do that, it's likely you're going to end up in a place where you're managing two projects. And this is going to be difficult. The talent that comes in from the open source is going to have a hard time understanding the monetized version or the proprietary commercial version. Uh, you're going to have problems with scaling because you're not going to fully benefit from what you have in the open source because you have your own infrastructure going on and things like that. The build process, the deployment process is going to become more complicated because this code has to come in, be modified, and then put on a server. So it's very important that you get this right. It'll save you so much time and effort if you start with having the correct architecture in place, if you're serious about commercializing your open source project. This idea of extensions, if anyone's wondering how it works, we have it right now. We have another refactoring on the way that is going to make it way more easier. But the perfect example for an extension system in place would be WordPress. WordPress is famous for it, actually. I mean, even if you're not a programmer, you've probably installed an extension for WordPress at some point. So that model is incredible. And ours is also heavily inspired by how WordPress does it. But if I had one thing in terms of scaling a commercial open source project, is that you should get the architecture right as soon as possible. You shouldn't end up with two different products.
That's a really important point. And one thing that I think it dovetails nicely with a lesson that, kind of we teach in our workshops is that for cost entrepreneurs, you should imagine that, put yourself in the world where your product has, gained traction, blown up, and become the de facto standard and design for that day, as opposed to kicking cans down the road in terms of, hey, it's all right if we undertake this technical debt right now, I will just take care of it down the road and that type of thing. Um, so we're up against our time in a little bit. The last question I wanted to ask is I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about what would you like to tell us about what's next for Pewter, and what are some of the exciting things that you're working on that you hope to be able to to show your community and the world very soon?
Yeah, we have a bunch of pretty cool projects coming out. We recently released our server-side workers, which allows you to run code in the cloud. Uh, just to put that into perspective, the idea of Pewter is building a computer uh, that is infinitely scalable for the regular user. Imagine your laptop can scale up and down in resources to play the craziest game or render videos within seconds rather than minutes or hours. Being able to run any type of program on a regular device. That means you need this cloud operating system that scales up and down. Now we have storage, we have AI, we have a lot of cool features, but one of the most important pieces of the puzzle that was missing is being able to run code in the cloud, specific code. We actually have this great partnership with Judge Zero that runs C++ and the 50 other programming languages. It's amazing, but we needed some integrated runtime with Pewter, built for Pewter, highly coupled with Pewter for JavaScript code. Now I got really into the technical side of things, but the idea is that you're going to be able to run programs in the cloud for Pewter. That's an exciting feature. Was one of the highest priority features coming from the community. That one we released in alpha, so can't wait to put it in beta and general availability soon. Um, we have a lot of AI things coming up. Who isn't? So we have our app builder coming out. We have our AI interface coming out. So you will be able to control Pewter using human language. So we're thinking that the graphical user interface is getting pretty dated now, to say the least. And I think conversation with the computer is going to be the next paradigm. We're very well positioned to make that happen, actually, because of the modern architecture that Pewter is built on. So that one is coming up. Our app store is coming up. You'll be able to deploy and monetize your apps through Pewter. This is also something that people asked a lot for. And then performance and stability, I think we're going to have incredible performance and stability improvements in the next several weeks. That's a very high priority for Pewter. We're adding more enterprise features to Pewter. You're going to have groups. You'll be able to manage groups. We're going to have certifications. We're going to actually publish our security certifications and attestations and things like that. And these are all within the next couple of months. There's more coming after that, but these are the very exciting things that we're shipping in the next couple of months.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you so much, Nariman. Really, you're working on a lot of exciting things, and we really appreciate you taking the time to share your experience and talk a little bit about what you've learned along the way. Um, if anybody has any questions, I guess this is your last chance. In the meantime, wanted to talk a little bit about Chinstrap Community. So, thank you everybody for joining Chinstrap Community. We are a resource center for open source entrepreneurs, for open source investors, for people who are interested in the idea of commercial open source. We offer workshops. We offer events like this one. We offer content, anything. We try to do anything we can for people who are interested in the idea of commercial open source, or are entrepreneurs who are considering going the open source route. Please visit us at our website, chinstrap.community. We have a blog. We also have a Discord server, which is linked from our website. So once again, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. If you do have any questions that you think of, please feel free to contact us, and we're available via the Discord server or via email. And once again, thank you so much, Nariman, for joining us, and we hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Bye.